Of Rafahi, thank you so much for joining us here on this day.
Thank you for having me here, Jonah.
First of all, let's start with the relation between Zambia and Israel. This is a relationship, as we understand it now, is being strengthened, as we've seen over the last few weeks, some announcements being made on the relationship. Why do you think this is an important relationship for the growth of Zambia and for the growth of Israel?
I'm a true believer in connections between people. And I think that even look at you and me. We coordinated without coordinating the colors of our suits. It shows that there is a lot of similarity and a lot of the bonding between the two countries, between the people, is very strong. And we just had to put it in the right diplomatic frame. We had very good relations. You have an embassy in Israel from 2015. I think it was just a promise that we had to fulfill. Your president came to Israel in August 23. Your Minister of Foreign Affairs was there recently after we announced of opening. And I was a non-resident ambassador working from Jerusalem, from the Holy Land, from Israel. And I was coming here back and forth. And I realized that, there is a real bonding between the two countries. And in order for it to flourish, in order for it to broaden, we have to open an embassy here. I was lucky enough that the new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Gideon Sar, once he came in, he said he wants to open more embassies. We put immediately on the table opening the embassy in Zambia, and he accepted it, and we worked on it really quickly. And I think now it will be my job, basically, to prove that it was the right decision and to enlarge really the base of the relations. Zambia just appointed also a new ambassador to Israel, because ambassador, we come and go. So you have a new ambassador in Israel now, so I assume he's very energetic as well. So I think there will be a lot of developments between the two countries in the near future.
A lot of the issues talked about have to do with the relations of the two governments, the Israeli government and the Zambian government. But there's also an aspect of the two peoples, the people from Israel and the Zambians as well. How can we improve the relation, make it stronger between the peoples of these two countries?
I think by coming each one to the other country. I know that right now there is a very good vibe in Israel about Zambia, thanks to the opening of the embassy, the visit of your minister in Israel, visit of our minister here. Travel companies, tourism, for example, Israeli travel companies started to promote tour in Zambia. Until now, maybe they crossed the border, they went to see Victoria Falls. Usually for safari, Israelis go to Tanzania, to Kenya, etc. So now Zambia is on the map with tourism. This is mainly work of your embassy in Israel to promote tourism to Zambia. And I think that now, when things are changing in the Middle East, maybe a wave of Zambian pilgrimage can come to Israel, or just tourists. We can offer things for whatever you like. You like art, you come for art tour, or I suggest always to attach something of contemporary Israel to the pilgrimage visits. Fortunately, we have a lot of Zambians in Israel. We have a nice program for students, agricultural students that are coming for hands-on experience, so they work and they study at the same time. We have about 150 every year. I think this is the best connection between Israelis and Zambians, because all the farmers that the Zambians are working there are in love with Zambia. Once you meet Zambian, you fall in love with the country and the people itself. So I think as much as we bring more Zambians to Israel and Israelis to here, it will happen anyway.
In the sense of geopolitics and in the political world of this relationship between Zambia and Israel, it was quite widely well received by a lot of citizens, a lot of people in the political space, but there were also some that had their own reservations. And they argued that these reservations are coming from some of the geopolitics that are surrounding Israel at this point in time. What do you think this sentiment of concern by some members of the political world does to the relation between Zambia and Israel?
There were democracies. Both Israel and Zambia are democracies. Forever you will have different points of opinion. I think what matters is what the majority is thinking, what the leaders are thinking, what is the perception that is passed on to the people. And I think that what was done here by your president, by our prime minister, president, foreign minister, by the way, there is very good relation between the two presidents. I think it shows that if you want to move forward, you can't step backwards and you can't look backwards. I can give you an example. Even throughout those horrible 2 years now, since the massacre of the 7th of October, none of the Arab countries disconnected relations with us. The Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, Jordan, Egypt. So if we can continue the relation with our neighbors or with the Arab countries, I don't think that Zambians should have reservations about relations with Israel, because it's only beneficial for both countries. And I don't think that a dispute over there in the Middle East that hopefully now, exactly today, is beginning to be resolved should bother you here in Zambia. I think that in Zambia you should concentrate on what you can gain from those relations. What benefits can come to Zambia or to Israel, you know, it's a partnership. So I think this is what we should emphasize, on the positive way, on the looking forward, on making the effort to work harder and to adapt more things from one culture to the other.
Let's talk about what you've just talked about now, this shift that could potentially result in this conflict being resolved. And let me ask it outrightly this way. Are we seeing this conflict finally being resolved since October 2023?
I can only hope for. I think today it's a real day of joy in Israel. It's hard even to say, because it's a joy that it's incorporated also with sadness. You know, we had, just before entering to the show, we had our 20 live hostages freed, finally from the being a hostage in Gaza. We still have 28 deceased. And in our tradition, it's very important that they will come back. I'm still having my bracelet, bring them back home, and my rainbow here, because we really want them all to come back, and it's part of the deal and the transition. Hamas really need to be disarmed. They really need to declare that they recognize our existence. I don't know if you ever felt that someone is questioning your existence. They have to declare that they recognize our existence. No more talks about from the river to the sea, because from the river to the sea means the elimination of the state of Israel. And I don't think that any one of us thinks that this is something visible or possible or thinkable. So we really need to make sure that those things are happening. So the first stage, Israel stop, the war. We start withdrawing according to the map and the line. Thanks, of course, to President Trump, who's just landed in Israel and is just speaking at the Israeli parliament. And I think he did a very brave and strong move forward, bringing together the Arab partners like Qatar, the Emirates, Turkey, and all the European countries to support it. Zambia was supportive all the way. And I think Zambia is a country, you're kind of like heaven here, you know. You have many tribes, you have many people, and you live in peace. And I think we have a lot to learn from you, because people come from different backgrounds with diversity. But at the end, we need to live together. And I don't know if you've had a chance to be to Israel, but it's a very small land. You're like, I think, more than 30 times bigger than us in size. So everything is small. If we would have been big as you, it would have been easy to, divide it and give one portion to this and that. But because we're very small, this is where everything started, and everyone's supposed to be exactly on the same spot.
Is this ceasefire going to work, you reckon? And I ask this because of a lot of criticism that has come, because some commentators and experts feel that Israel has not respected some of the previous ceasefires, that there's still continuing conflict despite some of the previous ceasefires that have been agreed upon. Is this one that people should be optimistic will work this time?
I don't think that Israel was the one that didn't respect the ceasefire. I just have to remind you that we had hostages held in terrible condition. The only one who were starving to death were the Israeli hostages, because you see now that all the celebration in Gaza, they all look quite good and okay. There was no starvation in Gaza. And Israel did not break the ceasefire. I think the difference is now that all the live hostages are back. Again, 28 deceased are still kept in Gaza. And I think that the difference now is that the world took it seriously. And the world took it seriously vis-a-vis Hamas. Because it's not that Hamas really could make the decision alone. It was with support and the backup of Qatar and Turkey and Egypt and Jordan, and everyone just told Hamas, stop. If you listen to interviews coming from Gaza Strip, the citizens of Gaza, the residents of Gaza are tired because Hamas not only kept Israelis as hostages, unfortunately Hamas was keeping his own people as hostages. I just saw an interview with a doctor, medical doctor from Gaza. And he went back to the area where his house was, and of course it's demolished because it was taken by Hamas terrorist members. And he's blaming Hamas, not Israel, because he knows that the blame is on Hamas, because there was a ceasefire. On the 6th of October of 23, there was a ceasefire between Israel and Gaza. We gave them everything. We gave them the ability to come and work in Israel. On a daily basis, 20,000 Gazans were coming across the border to work in Israel. 200 Palestinians from the West Bank, from the Judea and Samaria were coming to work in Israel. And they took advantage of that because they learned how the kibbutzim look like. They learned how to move around, and they took advantage of that. And that was the issue, that was the problem. Because the idea, we thought that, Israel was not in Gaza. We left Gaza unilaterally in 2005. There was not even one finger of Israeli in Gaza Strip. We took everything out in 2005. It was one of the hardest, let's say, dispute among, you're talking about people who are not agreeing. The right-wing map were totally against this withdrawal from Gaza Strip. And the government, which was a Likud government back then, a right government politically, said, no, we have to go out of Gaza. And we withdraw with Gaza against the will of the Israeli citizens who live there. They were all brought back to Israel, including, we opened all the graves and we brought all our dead people to Israel because we knew we're not coming back to Gaza. We have nothing to look for Gaza there. So, someone broke a ceasefire. It wasn't Israel. It was the other side. And I think that now with the guarantee of the whole international community, the special ISF, the International Stabilization Force that will be established now, with the supervision of the council that will be headed by Trump and probably Tony Blair. Trump in Israel just said that he wants to make sure that Tony Blair is accepted on everyone. The supervision will be different. So we think that now it will work. Plus, before, Hamas never agreed that we will stay as, safety zone. Just think what will happen if suddenly from Mozambique or Congo or something, someone will conquer Zambia. You think the president will sit still and do nothing? You can't. It's the responsibility of the president, it's the responsibility of the government to guard the life of the citizens. And the Israeli force, it's called Israel Defense Force, not Israel Attack Force. The whole idea is defending and not attacking. We never started a war.
When you talk about all the events that you've outlined, the withdrawal from the Gaza Strip in 2005, despite this withdrawal, it is also true that Israel did control the airspace of the Gaza Strip, the borders as well.
It's a very small area.
And based off of that, don't you think that this has also largely contributed? Because then this is part of where these issues were coming from during this period.
Allow me to disagree. And I will try to explain why. Because there is another country that has a border with Gaza Strip. Egypt. It's quite a long border. If you'll go and see the pictures, you can look on the satellites. The tallest and toughest closing border is the one with Egypt. Can you explain me why they didn't go out through Egypt? Why do they have to go through Israel that we're in conflict? And terrorists coming and doing attacks in Israel, we have to guard our border. We cannot let terrorists coming to Israel creating terror attacks. So they could go out through Egypt with no problem. Egypt didn't let them go out. Okay? So it's not only the blame in Israel. And the airspace, you know, it's not airspace. There's no airport in Gaza. It's not that planes can land. And all the flotilla boats, they're just damaging the climate change and they're not doing anything. They're coming without anything. It's just a PR. It's not a real thing. If it would have been a real thing, there is a way to send aid. During all this time, also before and also during the war, aid was entering Gaza with no problem. So it's not a question of Israel blocking. We are guarding our borders. If you want to cross the border from Tanzania to Zambia, there is a border control. You have to cross the border. Not everyone is getting a visa. Correct me if I'm wrong. Every country is guarding their borders, and that was a border between two people that are in a conflict. Still, we open the border for 20,000 Gazans to enter, like I mentioned before, on a daily basis. You know what was the first place that was attacked and Israelis were killed? The border crossing. Now, when we left in 2005, we left them everything. We didn't destroy. There was a flourishing agricultural community. Greenhouses, drip irrigation system that you can only dream about in Zambia. We left everything working and operating. You know what happened? They took like the pipes and everything. They destroyed everything, Hamas, when Hamas took control. First of all, they got rid of all the Palestinian people. They took all the pipes of the agriculture, they turned them into missiles. Instead of continuing, the late Shimon Peres, the president of Israel, he had a wonderful dream. I saw the plans, the actual plans. He built already an industrial zone on the border between Gaza and Israel in order for Palestinians to be able to go and work there without the need to go the hassle of crossing the border. It was like a demilitarized industrial zone. You know what happened to that? They bombed it, destroyed it. Unfortunately, the Hamas is not a group that you or I can understand their way of thinking. They're not thinking about the future of the people. They're thinking only about destroying, about jihad, about bringing the Islam, the extremist Islam, not the normal Islam, the Sunni Islam, the extreme Islam, the jihad on all the world, not only Israel. We're the first front. Then will come Europe, and then will come Africa. So we are actually your, buffer zone. So this is why Israel insisted that in this agreement is, in the 20 point, that Hamas cannot be part of it. The Palestinian has to create their own governing, ruling group, and the Palestinian Authority has to go through a reform in order to educate, not to hate Israel and the Jewish people, and then it can work out.
Do you think that the people that have been apportioning this blame on Israel are also coming from the perspective of the economies of scale in terms of the size of the Israeli military, which is quite a big military and a big defense force, even globally, when you talk about that scale. And when you talk about this exchange, I mean, you're talking about over 1,000 prisoners being sent back, against 48. You're talking about tens of thousands of people that have died in the Gaza Strip, and this is being attributed towards Israel. Some of these hospitals, schools, in all of this shelling. Isn't this where these people are coming from? That the scale has been massive from Israel?
First of all, if you look backwards, I'm sure in the archives here you can check it backwards. The demonstration against Israel started before Israel even put one step in Gaza Strip, immediately after the 7th of October, because the Palestinian and the pro-Palestinian side were sure that they're deleting Israel. They started all those things before. It took us, I think, maybe 3 weeks until we entered with the army to Gaza. So check those details. I'm sure you can find them. So there is nothing logic in the process here. okay? Because the hatred against Israel, against Jews, anti-Semitism was there forever, and I hope it will change. It's not something that we can control. I think it might be envious. You said the size of Israel and the size of our economy and the size of our military. It's not something logical that the country is so small, we're so, very few people, and we succeed so much. And people, hard for them to get it. So it's not a question of, I don't think that someone normal and intelligent can understand where this hatred is coming from. Because Palestinians had the chance to have a country in 1947 when the partition plan was decided in the UN. They decided no, and they started a war upon us, thinking that they can destroy us. Unlucky for them, lucky for us, they didn't succeed. That was our war of independence in 1948. In many countries, after you have your independence, that's it, you move forward. So there was an independence. From 48 to 67, under whom was Gaza Strip? It was under the Egyptian regime. And the West Bank or territories or what we call Judea and Samaria was under Jordanian. According to the UN, by the way, Jordan was supposed to be the country for the Palestinians, but there were very few at that time. So why they didn't establish the Palestinian state until 1967, when it was under Egyptian control or Jordanian control? Because that wasn't the issue. The issue is, I can't understand why, but the hatred. So it wasn't the issue. And they had the chance at the Oslo Accord. And people are saying that Israel, didn't obey to the Oslo Accord. That's not true. Because I will remind you that we signed the Oslo Accord in 93. And in 94, 95, things were starting to move forward. And we had a terrible wave of terror attacks. So what can you do? What would you do? What Zambia will do?
But Ambassador, would you say that anything justifies these strikes on schools, on hospitals, with so many civilians, women and children, dying?
Would you say, I'll send you the question back, okay? Would you justify that the Hamas was hiding inside those hospitals, inside those schools, inside all those UN places, and putting the Palestinian women and children as human shields above them and around them? Does this sound logical? Does it sound logical that they have a whole city underneath with tunnels that they're hiding in, enjoying their life and putting the civilians above them? So what are you supposed to do? This is a war zone. And by the way, according to the international law, once a place is used as a military thing, it's not obliged, it's turned to be a military. So I can't say how sorry I am for each and every life of a civilian or a child or a woman that got hurt or dead. But out of the big numbers, you have to remember that at least 50% of them are Hamas terrorists, Hamas, Jihad, Popular Front, all the good guys, the bad guys, of course, okay? But it's not that we wanted to touch an hospital. First of all, a lot was fake, but then let's put that aside. But I remember one hospital that they blame Israel, and at the end it was known to everyone that it was a local missile of jihad that they throw on us. I can tell you, me, as an ambassador, I was sitting in Tel Aviv, in Jerusalem, running. I told you, with sport shoes, because I had to run to the shelter. Because in Israel, unlike in Gaza, the government is building shelters for the people, not for the military. The military is in the front. But with the people, I was sitting at home, and in my phone there is a siren, or it's all over the siren. I have 90 seconds. If I'm in Tel Aviv, if you're near the border, you have 5 seconds, even not. You hear the siren and the bomb is already arriving. So does it sound normal to you that in every house in Israel, by law, you need to have a sheltered room? The old houses, like the house I used to live, I didn't have a sheltered room in the house, so I had to run to the public shelter. Great bonding with my neighbors, but it's not normal. The fact that we are resilient people, and I think it drives crazy the world that we are resilient. That I'm running to the shelter because the bomb is coming. I hear the house is shaken, but I'm underneath in a shelter. in Gaza, the leaders put themselves in the shelter, the terrorists put themselves in the shelter, and the citizens of them.
But then with that
normal.
said, with that said, and I hear you, but with that said, would you say that scale of collateral damage is justified? Because you say that Hamas has put up these people as a shield against them. But
unfortunately,
from a perspective of collective global responsibility, shouldn't you care about those civilians as well?
Every military expert will tell you that it's the lowest number ever in wars of collateral damage. And again, I'm really sorry that things like that happened. Would you blame Britain for the Nazis that were killed during World War II because it was a bigger number than the number of the British that were killed? Will you accuse the American because of the bomb that they put on Japan to end World War II? No, because it's a war. And the ratio of 1 to 1 or 1 to 2, unfortunately, that you're asking, so we need to go to those technicalities. According to every international law of war, there is international law. Because unfortunately, there are wars around the world, so there is an international law. Israel did not cross any line, any border. We were not even close to that. Because the relatively number, if we're talking, and again, I'm sorry for each and every one, it's hard for me to say. There is a very nice Israeli NGO by the name of Save the Child's Heart that works here in Zambia at the Heart Hospital. They already operated more than 100 Zambian kids in Israel. Very simple, like bring them life. And we trained the Zambians to operate here. Before the war started, half of the number, like thousands of kids have been operated from all over the world in Hulon, it's near Tel Aviv. Half of the number of the kids until the war were coming from Palestinian Authority and from the territories and from Gaza. No one knows about it. Israel treated Gazan children and saved their life. And then they turn to be terrorists and they go against Israel and you hear them and they're telling them, but Israel saved your life. Now we will kill the Israelis. It's not something normal. And I heard President Trump a few days ago, he was, there was a video running saying that if you will teach your children that the firefighters are your hero, that the educators are your hero, so the children grow up thinking that they should be doctors or they should be firefighters or they should be educators. But if you grow up your children with the thought that being a terrorist is a hero, and you can see all the videos, they publish it very proudly. Little kids with machine guns that want to commit a suicide, to be a suicide bomber. It's crazy. So if this is the education that you give, we have a lot of work now. This council that Trump is now forming will have a lot of work, a little bit like maybe happened in Japan after World War II, that they also had like an interim council governing there in order to change the way of thinking. And again, you live here in a security heaven, you have your own challenges. There are different challenges. I think it's very difficult for a Zambian who lives here in this heaven since your independence in '64, and congratulations soon for Independence Day, to understand or realize what does it mean to live in our neighborhood.
With all of this that's coming, even with the ceasefire, there's a discussion which you've just talked about with the council and all of that. Gaza faces a humanitarian catastrophe that is still there. Is there any level of responsibility or contribution that is expected from Israel with regards to the reconstruction and relief of this place, given that there's this control over access when it comes to the borders and access from other fronts? There
will be no problem of access. Philip Lazzarini, the head of UNRWA, just declared yesterday that first of all, there is enough food. Miraculously, there is enough food in Gaza for 3 months for everyone. He just announced it yesterday. So Israel always, the border was open, humanitarian aid could flow in. Now, of course, it's part of the deal. Israel will guard the humanitarian aid that will come in for food, for infrastructure, for rebuilding the hospitals, the schools. Hopefully, it won't be again, a place for the terrorists to come. I think that all the countries that will participate tonight in the Sharm summit they will vouch in order to rebuild. It's an opportunity to redo everything. I think Gaza was, from the videos before, they were complaining all the time that they're in a prison, but it wasn't a prison. They had very good life over there, and they had high rises and nice villas and everything. So it's not really, one thing that it's really always I'm curious is, there is a UNHCR. It's the UN agency for refugees. All the world refugees are under UNHCR, okay? So once you're a refugee, you go through a period of time and then you're not a refugee anymore because you either resettled in the country that you moved to or you go back to your country if the challenge has ended. The only one that has their own refugee agency, it's the Palestinian, UNRWA. And the only one that for the 5th generation, they're still refugees. They're living good life in the United States, they're still refugees. My father ran away from Lebanon, so we're refugees. So do we we hold the key of my father's house in Lebanon? No, million Jewish people ran away from Arab countries. They came to Israel as refugees. Israel accepted them, and they're all now Israelis. They're not longing and saying that they're refugees. My mother passed World War II in Italy, hiding in a monastery. Family members were killed, so we move forward. They came to Israel, they ran to Israel with the first boat in 1945, and we settled in Israel. At a certain point, you have to move forward. You cannot continue to play the victim again and again and again. We have to move forward. We move forward. You move forward. We're in Africa. What are we talking about? We have to move forward.
When we talk about moving forward, like you've talked about now, what's Israel's vision in this case? I mean, you've rightly said there shouldn't be Hamas in this discussion from your perspective. But how should then Gaza be governed? Are we talking about a two-state solution here? Are we talking about an international coalition for the sustainability of the Gaza Strip and protecting the lives of the many people that live there?
I think, as mentioned in the 20-point program of Trump, I think it was number 19 towards the end, or 18, that if everything will be fulfilled, we can speak about self-recognition and recognizing a state for the Palestinian. In order to reach to that point, all the previous condition has to be fulfilled. Hamas should be disarmed. They should be out of, they cannot control the place. If it's mentioned there, if a Hamas member saying, okay, I'm putting down my weapon, I recognize the existence of the state of Israel, he can get pardon and he can move out of Gaza. No punishment. But he has to understand that. The Palestinian Authority needs to go through a reform. The reform goes back, the reform that is mentioned is relying on the Trump program from 2020 and on the recent initiative of Saudi Arabia and France that also had something to do in rolling this program. So in order to do this, they have to move through this. Meanwhile, there will be like an international governing body together with the Palestinian in order to make sure that it's moving ahead. But before changes will be made, it will be naive to think that we won't go backwards. That's why we really need international guarantee. And Israel is withdrawing. You saw, as it was mentioned, immediately we withdraw to the first line. If you remember of Gaza, they had the yellow line as the first stage now. Now that the hostages were released, we're still waiting. The agreement was in 72 hours, all the hostages, live and deceased. We're still waiting to see that everyone is coming back. Then we continue to withdraw. We have no problem to withdraw. We just need the guarantee that another war won't start upon us from Gaza.
Many Africans, including some leaders here in Zambia, view the situation in Gaza through the lens of colonial history and liberation struggles. This is an active conversation that people are having. And I want to ask
Wrongly so.
And I want to ask you how Israel is responding to the increasing sympathy that Palestine is getting from Africa, but also from other parts of the world. You saw this even from the just ended United Nations General Assembly.
United General Assembly is biased by, as is. They have automatic veto of all the Arab countries. I think you cannot, whoever understands colonialism cannot even try to say this world with Israel, because we are the indigenous people to this land. I assume you're a devoted Christian, you know where we come from. We come from this land. This is our land. You have archaeological sites dating 3,000 years ago and even more, with Hebrew inscription from the Bible that I can read today. It's exactly the same language. We are the people. We were colonized by others. We were conquered by others. The Islam conquered the area of Israel. There was no Palestine. You know what's the meaning of Palestine? It's Philistine. Philistine, Eretz Israel. Philistine, state of Israel from the Roman time. There was no state of Palestine. There was none. Show me a stamp. Show me the bills of the note. There wasn't. There is no colonialism. We just came back to our own land. I told you my father was born in Beirut, but if we go backwards, 8th, 9th generation in the state of Israel. I happened to be born in the state because
but a lot has changed in the world, and a lot has changed in the world from 3,000 years ago, and that's why we're having this conversation today.
But we were always there. My mother family, we track it back to the rabbi in Hebron in the 16th century. There was no Palestinian there in the 16th century. There were always Jews there. So we are not a colonialist entity, and people have to understand it. And to fight ignorance, yeah, we have to. To fight fake news, we have to. What can we do? But this is what we have to do. This is our responsibility. But misinterpretation of the situation, I would be careful, because you cannot compare what happened in Africa and the colonization here with what's happening in Israel, because we are the indigenous people. The Crusader came and throw us away. The Roman came and throw us away 2,000 years ago. And then again the Islam, and then again the Persians, and then again the Christians. And then, wow, we share the British Mandate. I forgot to mention the Turk and the Ottomans. So who is indigenous to the area? It's us.
All right.
So this is the truth.